right, guys. Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unlimited. We got a real good show tonight. We got some cool stuff that's kind of going to be kind of new for us. We're still testing it out a little bit. We're going to show you a little bit of it tonight. Excuse me. First of all, let me tell you that last week we didn't have a show because I was recovering from COVID. So I had a cough and kind of sinuses and things like that. It wasn't too bad on me. The first time I had COVID was back when it first actually broke out real bad, and before they ever had any kind of boosters or vaccines or anything. COVID wasn't too bad on me then. It was worse on my wife, and this time it was not bad on me at all. I spent one day in the bed, but I had several days where I just still had a lot of sinuses and things like that, and I've still not got all my strength back. I noticed it today mowing grass. Fatigue and breathing really sets in all at once out of the blue. And when I had COVID the first time, it took me about 6 months really to get past that part. I'd be out hiking, it'd be 2 or 3 miles deep, and then all at once I would just lose my wind and my energy would just go down. I'd have to sit and wait for about usually it took about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I was okay. But that's why we didn't have a show last week, because I was still recovering from that. And the Friday, I think it was before that, I knew I had COVID coming on, so I definitely wanted to get the show in before I struck real bad. It all started in my throat and things like that. But anyways, we're kind of past that now, so hopefully we can roll a show out today and some more in the future. I got some other stuff I want to talk to you about. Before I get to that, though, let me see if I can get Leo in here. We'll make sure his mic's working and everything's cool and he's awake and all that kind of stuff. Leo, you awake?
Awake?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm never asleep.
You don't sleep much, no?
No, I don't.
This past week, my wife has been on the torture shift where she has to get up like 2 something in the morning. And sometimes I get up with her, sometimes I don't. But it breaks my sleep regardless. So she likes the shift, and I like the idea that she gets to come home about 12:30, 1 o'clock or something like that. But man, that getting up at 2 o'clock is pretty rough to get used to it. And then big storm up this morning.
Well, we're going to end up with some storms because this heat's crazy.
Oh man, we had all kinds of thunder and stuff early this morning, and it terrified my dogs. So not a whole lot of rain, and it was hard at times, but not a whole lot of rain. I was able to mow my grass and everything today, so it wasn't too bad.
Kentucky thunderstorms terrify me.
I like hearing them. I don't like the wind. The thunder don't bother me too bad, and the lightning, as long as it's away from me.
Well, that's the thing. I don't mind it unless it gets too close, and then I'll respect it and take my rear end inside and stay there.
We used to have these metal chairs, and I used to like to sit out and watch the thunderstorms and rain, but they had these metal chairs. I got to where I wouldn't sit out there in them because of the lightning. I said, no, I'm not sitting out there in that metal chair and it lightning everywhere.
That was probably a wise decision.
I watched from inside. All right, before we get on into some of the other stuff, I want to share a little information with you about our, excuse me, as you can see, I still got some sinus problems. I want to share a little information about our YouTube channel. For those who are so inclined, we actually have a membership that you get exclusive behind the scenes stuff. If you want to join it, if you don't, that's cool. It's just a little extra option. It helps us. You get special badges and insignias and things like that, and you get quite a few behind the scenes videos and exclusive videos and stuff like that. And it runs from like $1.99 a month up to I think about $3.99 a month or something like that. And that's something that if we offer, that I'm glad that Facebook offers it now. It kind of gives you another avenue to get some revenue in and maybe get to connect with your audience a little bit more. So we have that, and there's a little join button at the top of our page. If you want to check that out and look it over, you can do that. And I just wanted to share that with everybody in case you didn't know. Let's get that off the screen. see me looking at my ear in the video. uh, all right. Leo, I would say for tonight, let's start with some of the recent news. We recently did a show about serial killers, and one of them, of course, well, both of them actually. One of them was tied to Bigfoot, and the other one was he was obsessed with Bigfoot. Kind of looked at Bigfoot as religion, and the other guy who was killing people who were out hiking. So we've had some news the last few days that kind of falls into that category. One of them, which I'll show first, was this hiker. His body was found, Appalachian Trail hiker found dead in Virginia. My understanding on this was that they found him dead in his tent. He had been there evidently a few days. Seemed like, if I remember correctly, he was in his 50s, and they didn't suspect any foul play. Thought maybe he might have had a heart attack or something like that. But I think he was 55, if I'm not mistaken. That was one of the stories that broke this week. And this year is one that's kind of close to home for me. If you've ever been down around Cumberland Falls area and hiked and stuff down in that area, which I know several people that do, and I do it myself, there was a 10-year-old girl that was hiking. Now, I don't know if she was alone or her parents was around or whatever, but somebody tried to abduct her on this trail. And you can see the guy's description there. So, like me and Leo was talking before, it's important to be prepared for things like this. We talked about the serial killer who I think he killed 4 or 6 people they end up tagging him with, and he would find hikers, and he would steal their debit card and make them give him the pin. Then he would cut their head off and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it pays, if you're going to be out on these trails and stuff, to have some kind of protection with you. We got a friend named Tom who he told me he'd actually hiked in this general area, and I know I've been down around through there a lot and plan on going more. But usually if I'm out state park or not, I'm packing my weapon anymore. I used to not pack a weapon, but I do now. So that was something that was interesting that broke this week. And then I got one more I want to talk about a little bit. Man says he killed his friend because he summons Bigfoot. I don't know if you guys seen this. That's a picture of the guy. They were out noodling catfish, and evidently they must have been on some kind of dope or something. And see, I think I got some more information right here. Have you? The Pawtucket County Sheriff's Office responded to a call about an incident on the South Canadian River near Ada, Oklahoma. Authorities said the 2 men were noodling, catching catfish with their hand in the river on July the 9th when a confrontation began. The 53-year-old man began to strike and strangle the other man and eventually killed him. The man told authorities that his friend had summoned Bigfoot to come and kill them, and that's why he had to kill his friend. Larry Sanders was the name of the 53-year-old man that actually committed the murder. He was taken into custody this weekend, and he is facing first-degree murder charges. Evidently, I would say they was probably on drugs, but both of them had some kind of prior knowledge to Bigfoot. So maybe he thought the guy was really going to call Bigfoot and have him, killed or whatever. But Leo, you have any thoughts about this kind of thing?
Oh man, bad week to ask me that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's another topic. If you want to talk about that briefly, you can as well. Totally up to you.
well, I don't want to use. Definitely don't want to use any names yet, but a friend of both me and Tom, I think I kept in touch with him a lot more frequently.
I'm
16
sorry, Leo. Are you
for
back? I'm sorry, I accidentally clicked you.
What was the last thing you heard?
That the friend of mine and yours. Go ahead and start from there.
Well, got arrested for on Tuesday. Got arrested for 2016 murder of an 18-year-old girl,
Yeah.
and yeah, this is a guy that I over the last 3 years we never met face to face, but we were in touch quite often, 2 and 3 hour phone calls and stuff. So
I talk to him pretty often too.
yeah, you had the yeah through the for
Hmm.
zombie media, but
Yeah, yeah. He referred
yeah,
to his
uh,
classes.
completely completely unexpected. I knew that he had a past. I knew that he had a past with drugs and all that, but things seemed to at least the way things were being played to me was that that was all in his past, and he had gone back to school. He had gotten a job, and as far as I knew, there was very little drama. Things were going better than usual with his family, and he was getting out in the woods a lot with his grandson. Uh, but the last few times that I had been talking to him, I could tell he wasn't being straight with me about, you know, he had got back on what he was on. He'd be okay at the start of a conversation. Halfway in, he was slurring his words, and that's why I knew that he was back on the drugs. But I mean, that's he's way down there. I'm way up here.
Well, he's not that far from me actually. So
No, but I mean, in my case, I mean, when it comes to somebody who wants to get sober off of anything,
sure.
I tend to listen to them, and because if they really want to do it, then I'm always willing to listen. But
Uh,
uh, I
well,
just didn't
I'd
see
read.
any sign of this.
Well, I'd read the latest update on this guy, and they'd had recorded some phone conversations while he was incarcerated a few years ago. And in the phone conversations, according to the news article, he had referenced this girl's body being found or not found, and he kind of threatened a few people not to talk about it and stuff like that. So they got some evidence that really points to the guy. So I don't know, man. It's just it's. I know we probably talk to killers and murderers every day, uh, but we don't know it. So when we find out that maybe somebody we know fairly well and know for several years uh, could potentially be a murderer or maybe even a serial killer, I hate to throw that out there early, but there's some talk that he may be involved in other murders. But now that's kind of a rumor mill thing. But the police act like there might be other arrests coming associated with this murder from 2016. The little 19, I think she was 19-year-old girl.
And she was 18, and they came out and stated that there would be more arrests. Uh, but I don't know if you knew, but they right, the day after they went and got her remains. She hasn't
Okay.
been. I mean, they know roughly, that it's her.
Okay. No, I
Conveniently, a
didn't. I
day.
didn't see they found the remains. I hadn't seen that part.
Yeah, that kind of set me back a little bit. I just found out like 4 hours ago. Um,
Well, I
the
didn't.
so they called her mother and let her know, but they still have to do the positive,
Sure.
they get
Make
testing and all
sure.
that. But they know. So I
Uh,
mean, he got arrested that Tuesday. That the body they go get the body that they had no idea where to look for the last since 2016. So
well,
that
it's good to have
he
that.
did it, and it's just hard to get through my head that I invited the man into my home and was
Right.
going
Yeah.
to take with not just me but Becca too into the woods with this dude. And
Well, how many
uh,
people do that though in the Bigfoot field? How many times have I know I've been contacted several times by people who said, "Hey, will you take me out Bigfooting?" And most
all
of
the
the time,
time.
it's sometimes it's people I know, sometimes it's people I don't know, and usually, I'm kind of a easygoing type fella. Well, yeah, come on, I'll take you somewhere. Well, just like Guy that's from Arkansas, I didn't know him, and He came and we went out. He's not a serial killer or anything, but I didn't know him. Uh, just through phone conversation and email and things like that. He don't have social media, but I've invited people out into the woods that I didn't really know, but it could be dangerous. Especially, I think the biggest problem is I hate to say this, but if it's female, if a female is inviting a man she don't know, to me would be potentially more dangerous than if you or I invited somebody because I pack a gun now, pistol, and we're bigger and we can kind of handle ourselves. Or maybe a lady may not be able to. A lot of times women are smaller and they can't fight off a large man. The strength's just not there. But if they got a gun, they can.
Well, I mean, I know of a case 5 or 6 years ago now out of Washington State that the guy was just making. He's actually passed on quite young, but he's passed on now. But he was just the most outrageous Bigfoot claims that he's just well known for there not being absolutely nothing there, but
yeah,
he was worshipped.
I know who you're talking about. He
And
was a friend of mine, not personal, but through the internet.
Yep.
And even after he unfriended me, he continued to follow me.
Well,
He's following you.
Nothing surprised me. Nothing would surprise me about him. He was. I hate to speak bad of the dead, but it is what it is. The guy was a jerk. But
oh yeah,
and the thing was,
he was dangerous type fellow.
Well, he was, and there were females that there were women that came forward and said what happened when he was. He was exclusively taking women in there. I mean. Mm-hmm.
And he would be considered a handsome type man by most ladies, probably.
And his girlfriend was drop dead gorgeous, but sick people are sick people. What makes sense to us ain't gonna make sense to them.
That's right. Well, we probably spent more time than we had planned on the news, but that's okay. That's interesting information. One little cool thing that I want to share with everybody tonight. I still got to work the kinks out, but we are all. I'm trying to set us up a different camera. This camera is actually pointing out my back window. So I'm still working out the kinks, and it was kind of a rush job. So we can kind of see the sky, and this is the railroad track goes down through here. And I've seen a big bear and stuff walk down through there, and I've had deer come and jump over the fence and be in the backyard. So that's something a little something extra we're trying to kind of work around on, and maybe start offering people a little look outside while we're talking. Once I get everything situated, which I think will be kind of cool. That's something a little different. Now, tonight's show, of course, we're going to be talking about hermits. And the first one we want to talk about, I'm going to give just a little bit of information on this. I know Leo kind of turned me on to this. So he had watched a program about this guy, and he said I should check it out. Well, and they even said we should do a show about it. Excuse me. A hermit is a person living in solitude. Often they're called a recluse or a loner, or I don't know. They just get away from society and live. But a lot of times they do still filter in and out of towns and things to get groceries or something, and then you may not see them again for 6 or 8 months. The guy we want to talk about tonight, his name is Willard McDonald, and he was known as the Hermit of Gully Lake. And my understanding, Leo, this general area is not too far from you, correct?
About 2.5 hours.
About 2.5. So that's not very far. Do you want to talk a little bit about this guy?
Well, there's a few things. Tell
us how he become. What happened when he made him go be a recluse, be a hermit.
Well, a lot of people are under the impression that during wartime, Canada didn't have a draft. Technically, we didn't. We had, I forget what the right name for it was, but it was basically a draft, but you could. The hook was that if you were drafted, you didn't have to see battle. You could stay. You could serve in Canada, which
You stayed in your home country.
yeah, which wasn't true at all. They were taking these guys and those training them for 2 weeks and sending them off to battle. So that wasn't the case at all. But that was the original hook for it. But anyway, he happened to be one of the ones that got drafted. Why they don't call it drafted here, I don't know, but it's Canada, so anyway. And he actually hopped off the train, and for his entire life, his reason for doing it was the Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill," and I'm not going to kill anybody. So
he jumped off the train in 1944 to avoid World War II.
Yep. So anyway, he after several other stops, he ended up in Gully Lake, which is in Nova Scotia, and ended up living. I hope you got some pictures, man.
I've got a few pictures. I got a few pictures, not a whole lot. I got a picture of him. I got a picture of him. That kind of helps us. And I got a picture of his cabin as well, and the location of the lake and where his cabin was at.
But this is what blows my mind. 60 years. I mean, he would go into town to, I think, pick up flour or something like that every now and again. And that kind of thing, but very, very, very seldom. And
I seen that. If I remember too, I think occasionally he went in and visited his mother.
He did, but the majority of the time he just didn't want anything to do with people, especially government. He didn't trust, even when people went in and let him know, you've been there, you're not facing any trouble here. You've been pardoned. There's no, the war's over. You're good to go. He didn't. He was happy where he was at, but 60 years, and when you see the inside of this cabin, and I always get on Americans about, they always think that Canada is snow and ice all the time, and it's not. We have extremely hot summers and things, but 60 years of a Canadian winter in that.
Yeah, I think they said it was like a 6x8 or something like that.
6x8, yep.
And we're talking about in a place where it's not unheard of to get 4 feet of snow.
No, it is not, and that's you got to think about drifting and stuff like that too. So I can't imagine how 60 years. I mean, I can see someone pulling this off for 10 years and then go, no way. But 60 years?
Right. Well, I was, as I watched this documentary about this, and I've also read a little bit about the guy, the best I could determine, once he jumped from the train and built his cabin and all that kind of stuff, before he had the next time he was actually seen by a person was in the 70s by a hunter. So that means he was roughly there 20 years and nobody knew it. He was back in the middle of nowhere and nobody knew he was there for 20 years. And he survived.
But again, people say that can't be done. Well, he did it, and several others. I mean, he wasn't the only one that jumped off that train. Apparently,
I remember
in this area alone, there were several.
I think there was. They said there was. If I remember right, there was. Was it 100,000 troops and 6,000 of them actually skipped? Something like that. Which I'm sure
it's something close to that. Yeah.
But once, what I got from the documentary, once some of these hunters actually knew the guy was back there, they would frequent the area a little bit, and a lot of times, even if they didn't see him, they said they would see his tracks because he had some snowshoes. My understanding was I don't know if he'd made them. Other things too, he'd made his own guitar while he was there, and he played the violin. He only had like an eighth grade education, but he could read and write. Cause I noticed in the documentary that there was a few people who would bring him old books. There were certain books that he wanted to read and things like that. Which was the documentary is really it's quite a bit old, and of course it's not no high quality HD footage or anything like that, but it's easily watchable.
Yeah, I think it was one lady in particular that would make sure that he had that would come in and make sure that he had books and things like that. But for all of the things that he could have had, he used an old hubcap for a frying pan,
Yeah, and he had
and
like a tin stove that made out of tin or something. Did he cook
it
those?
wasn't any. It was nothing any thicker than tin. I mean, that
Okay.
was that's what I mean. That for that many years, just it doesn't make sense that he could even could live through, even a few years. But it's amazing.
Well,
But yeah, they did go in, and if they didn't see him, which if after that long, if he didn't want them to see them, he wouldn't. And he was kind of a he knew he had to put up with people coming in, and he wasn't necessarily rude to them, but he could have taken it or left it. He was
oh yeah.
kind of glad
Well,
they were
he'd been
there,
out there
but
on his own.
yeah, so he really didn't care for nosiness or anything like that. That's for sure. But
And you can see
um,
this picture here. This is after people have had brought him stuff.
yeah.
This is probably many years later. But I'd say this was probably in the late 70s, 80s, or something. Uh, you can see where they brought stuff to him, and they said that he didn't really want it, but he would take it. He didn't really feel like he was, obligated to take it or whatever, I guess. But he didn't really need it or want it. He was making it all right without it. Is kind of was his attitude.
Yeah, he was very iffy about everything like that. He would take it obviously because whether he wanted to admit it or not, I'm sure he did
Oh, I'm
enjoy
sure.
a lot of it because I mean, out there he's living now. That's it's some amazing fishing right there, and hunting too. So I mean, I'm sure he did okay, but I mean, something that he doesn't get to eat very often, and someone brings it into him, he's going to enjoy it. But yet he also seemed very well. Thank you, but you know what I mean. He just didn't feel real comfortable with it.
And I think they had talked too about how how he was actually really strong, and that he would catch I
Mhm.
think it was trout and eel, and he'd kill his own I guess deer and squirrels and rabbits and porcupines and all kinds of stuff, and eat. And I guess if you're out there like that, you just about have to.
Pretty much.
And according to the documentary and what I can find, his uh, his house was somewhere back in here, inside this red circle. I got I've got a more up to date map as well. And what's kind of neat about this map, if you'll notice, the river, I mean the lake and the stream and stuff have changed over the years a little bit, probably due to flooding and snow melting and things like that. You kind of see that's kind of where it was at. You kind of see the shape of the lake is kind of made a little bit different now. But his house was right back up in this area somewhere. And you can see the difference in how the lake has changed. But what didn't really change was this big elbow, and
Mhm.
that's how we could determine basically where his house was, or where his little cabin or whatever you want to call it, Shaney was.
And if I understand it correctly, and I think I do, this is all protected area now.
Yeah, it is now. And I wish I'd have got a zoomed out picture of the area because there's not really anything around. There's a road if you're going downward. There's a road or a trail or something uh, there, and now there's a lot of hike trails and things like that. I think there's even some ATV riding and things like that they do there now. And they probably did it some back then, but not like it is now. I'm sure there's a lot more people living out there now than there were 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, this is definitely isn't where he was at. Yeah, you could get there, but this isn't uh, a log cabin on the back of grandma's property. He was out in the woods.
Well, what was interesting about this to me, as he got older and more people came to see him and knew him and things like that, they said that he didn't mind you asking a few questions, but if questions went too far, he wouldn't answer you, and it was time to change the subject. But some of the people after he got so old, one guy had his birth certificate. I guess he got it from his mother or whatever, and gave him his birth certificate. So they knew how old he was. It wasn't a guesswork. And he got old enough where he could draw a check from the government. And the people kept coming in trying to get him to sign paperwork so he would get this money, and he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't sign his name, and I can understand because the last time he signed his name was when he thought he was going to stay at home and serve his country and not have to go abroad and fight in a war. Well, they kind of hoodwinked him there a little bit and then tried to send him away. So I guess he wasn't too anxious to sign a government document again.
Well, and it's not. Like I said, it was two things he did not like: is nosy people and government. So he didn't want any dealings with the government at all. And because, like you said, the last time he signed his name, he kind of got screwed that time. So, uh, yeah, he was not very trusting, and I don't think he could actually shake the idea that there after this, this amount of time, there wasn't going to be consequences. And I also think that there's just part of him that, regardless of where he ended up in life, I think he'd have been a very private person anyway. So I kind of got that vibe from him that he would be a person that not necessarily a recluse, but someone who minded their own business anyway.
Another thing too that was interesting about this guy, he I don't know exactly when he started doing it, but he had actually took some furs and stuff and sold them. And I think they said he actually sold a few hatchet handles. And occasionally people would drive him into town, and he'd maybe get a few things and then drop him back off or whatever. So people were good to him as far as helping him and stuff like that. But they was amazed about how he could survive back there in the winters in that little old shed like thing. Really,
Yeah, it just makes no sense at all, but yet he did it. But
I don't.
they did uh, when they approached him about his Canada pension, which is what he would have been entitled to. They really, really, really pushed, and uh, eventually they had to go to the courts. So I believe it was a social worker, ended up um, his trustee. So he didn't have to assign to accept it. She accepted it for him and put it in a trust, which he didn't touch.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Never touched it. There was a couple other interesting things, Leo, and I like to get your take on it a little bit. Uh, he often talked about ghosts and spirits, uh, and he often wondered. Well, he said that the ghosts and spirits sometimes would give him songs, uh, and then he would. Then he's also said that at times, I guess when people was taking him to town or whatever, he would hear a similar song on the radio or whatever, and he would wonder how people were stealing his songs because he was back there by himself, and these songs I guess were just coming to him, and he was writing them or playing them or whatever. And I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect of it, that he, for some reason, he believed in ghosts and spirits back there. So it makes me believe that he either had some kind of activity going on, or he seen some things, or something to make him feel this way.
Well, not only that, there was the song thing, but not only that, uh, and otherwise, this guy did not seem crazy in any way.
Oh no, not at all.
But yet he, at the same time, he said that he knew of that aliens were real, and one type he knew the name. He knew the name of one type of aliens. So, but I mean, the first thing that I said to Becca after we were done is, I would have liked to see what his eyes and his ears have seen. Can you imagine what he knows from being back there that long? How much more he knows than what we do?
Oh, well, just to survive along, back there trapping your own food, uh, that experience is something that most of us will never have to experience that. But you wonder if he did see Bigfoot occasionally, and then I also wonder if people saw his foot tracks and thought maybe it was a Bigfoot, and it's very possible. Uh, uh, Being back in the middle of kind of nowhere, and then you're out there fishing or whatever, and you see these humanoid like tracks walking on the side of the lake, and you're the only dude back there. It make you wonder, I guess. But I'd say he's seen some amazing things, probably Bigfoot and everything else.
Well, I mean, with just the things that he's probably seen animals do, and animals interacting that shouldn't be interacting, and just 60 years in the woods to just sit and observe. Man, he's seen some crazy stuff.
Well,
That's a guarantee.
Well, one of the guys in the documentaries that was talking about when he would go back there and hunt deer, he would always stop and talk to him, and said it seemed like he always did better after he had talked to him. I wonder if he gave him tips or told him where the deer were or something like that, because if he lived there and roamed around or just stood around, he knew where the animals moved back and forth from, which direction they came from, and that type of stuff. So it would be easy for him to point a hunter in the right direction.
Well, I mean, that's the impression that I got from the guy, is that because I think he said that he always had better luck right after he talked to them, and so I would imagine he was probably the people that he saw frequently enough that he would care about. I'm sure that he can send him in the right direction, give him a little tip here and there.
We're talking about his money. These folks got the idea that he needed a better home. They consulted with him and asked him where he would like to have it at, how it would like the surroundings to be, and of course he picked a place. He wanted a place where it was very secluded and lots of woods and things like that. So they took. I think they said it was at the time it was roughly about $20,000 to make him what would be the equivalent nowadays of what we call a tiny house back in the woods. And I don't know how far away it was from where he was actually at. But the plan was to get him to move into that because it's a little more modern, and I'd say it probably had beds and running water and things like that in it, which he probably, well, I know he didn't have in his little shanty hole there.
Well, no, I mean he was into his 80s, and his health was starting to catch up with him, but it was I believe it was just like a little barn-shaped type of house, a cabin type thing. But they had a hard time.
Yeah, I don't think, did he ever go stay in it at all?
I don't know if he actually spent the night in it.
Thing too, I got a few notes here. Uh, they tried to get him to move, of course. One guy actually built a better stove for him
Mhm.
and brought him. But I think they said it sat outside for months, and he didn't put it in his.
He did, he appreciated it, and it did end up going in, but it sat there for a while.
That for a long time. Uh, I got another thing here that a picture that he lived to be 87 year old, and it comes to the point where his health was failing. Uh, since he'd been in the woods, he'd never been to a doctor, he'd never been to a dentist, uh, basically no contact at all. So they kind of wanted to start forcing him to go to a doctor first, and then the idea was to put him in some kind of old folks home, rest home, something like that. Well, he wasn't having any of that. But sadly, his makeshift home that he'd been in for 60 years burnt down. Uh, and they thought maybe at the time that they would be able to force him over into the other house, the one they built, but he didn't do it. Uh, and he lived after his house burned. He lived roughly a year, I think, or something like that. Ain't that correct, Leo?
Mhm. Yep.
And of course, when his little shack burnt, it burned all of his books. He had all kinds of books. He had various writings, his homemade guitars, and I seen one article that said he had a 303 rifle
Mhm.
uh, that was also destroyed in the fire. Um, Maybe he did move. See, I got a little note here. He did move into the cabin briefly.
See, I didn't know that he
Yeah,
whether he actually even spent a full night there.
yeah, he moved. He lived in it briefly. I don't even know how many days. Uh, but in 2003, that's when they was really pressuring him to go get some medical help, and that's when he left that little home that they'd built for him, and he went back to where his original Shaney was built at. Is my understanding, and nobody had seen him in a while, and then they actually found him dead. July the 5th, 2000, found his remains. He died evidently several days prior to this. But think about it. He lived out there on his own. He had contact after he'd been out there by himself for roughly 20 years. Uh, Never seen a doctor. Never went to a dentist. Never had to go to the pharmacy. Uh, and he did all right. The 87-year-old. We got people now that don't make 87-year-old, and they go to the doctor often.
No, he was insanely tough, but like I said, I'd love to be able to know just what he saw within a few years of being just out there by himself. And
Also,
I'm glad he died the way he did. I know that might sound crude, but I'm not saying it to be crude. The man wanted to live the way he lived, and to force him into even the small little place that they built for him, that probably scared him to death. He hasn't been in society since the 40s. So can you imagine? I mean, to live that way and to get to move in to something like that, I can't imagine him being able to slow his mind down enough to. It makes sense to me why he couldn't stay there and why he wanted to go back. And he probably knew he was dying. I think he probably wanted to die where he wanted to die on his terms.
oh, I'm sure he wanted to die in the wilderness. That's where
Yep.
he spent all his time. Another interesting thing about him too is that he actually could drive a car. He had drove a car before he went to the military. And even when he lived out here in the woods, he had a bicycle that he would sometimes ride back and forth to town to get goods or go see his mother or whatever, which was kind of neat. Uh, Bicycling, I know some people who are older who actually ride bicycles, and it's a very healthy thing to do. But if you're, but around here, you got to watch the traffic; it'll run over you. But I'm like you. I think he died the way he would have wanted to, is out in the woods, where he spent really the majority of his life. But he lived a full life. 87 year olds have a full life, especially
That's
that
for
kind of
sure.
roughing. One thing too about his fire, I read it or either it was in the documentary, was that he had wrote down like a diary, kept like a diary uh, for all those years, and that also burned up in the fire. Now, wouldn't that have been something really great to have? How many
Yeah,
stories were in that?
yeah, it would be wild, but and it's a shame that the whole thing's a shame. Not his story. I don't think that's a shame at all. It's what the man wanted to do, but the fact that he ended up losing his stuff. I mean, after that many years, and the historical value alone, plus the thing for weirdos like us that want to know what kind of paranormal stuff he's seen.
Yeah, Bigfoot stuff. And
Yeah.
what people may not realize too, a lot of times when somebody becomes a hermit or lives like this guy did, a lot of times it is sometimes tied to religion, religious beliefs, in one way or another. And this guy, from what I understand, this guy's father and mother were something like maybe missionaries or evangelists or something like that. So he did have some kind of a religious type upbringing to a certain age.
Yeah, that was his whole objection. Was he said the Bible says not to kill, and I'm not going to kill, and that's all he basically all he'd say about when it came to why he didn't go. The Bible told me not to kill, so I don't kill.
And me and Leo both would recommend that you watch this film. You can actually find it on YouTube, of course, for free, or you can watch it on Tubi TV, which I think the quality to me is a little better on Tubi TV. You don't have the little ads come up in the bottom sometimes that aggravate you. You do get commercials, but you don't get the little pop up banner ad things. Uh, and if you get a chance, watch it. It's a little over an hour long. It's actually a pretty good little film. I enjoyed it.
And but the crazy part, in the end, it does get crazier.
Yeah,
The
it does.
man, you want to go ahead and with
You
that?
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah. I kind of slipped my mind on that, but yeah, that's interesting.
The man. Well, first of all, there was a guy around that it was even assumed because he looked so much like him that he was his son, and uh, the guy was convinced that he was his son, and he really did look like him. But in the end, they did DNA tests. He was not the son. However, they did want to locate the next of kin because not only was he uh, not having any money from accepted any money from the Canadian government, he had been left money and had money that whole time, and
So,
whoever his next of kin is has a ton of money coming to them. So
yeah, yeah, they're still looking. Far as I know, they're still looking for his next of
yep.
kin because he had a significant. They didn't give the dollar amount, but they said it was a large amount of money. And I think they had a few personal artifacts from maybe where his cabin burnt down that they wanted to pass on uh, to to the family. I would imagine that if a person could hike into where he had his cabin, you could probably find quite a few artifacts to you to this day. He died in 2004. He lived there all the way up into 2003, so you're looking at another roughly 20 year. I'm sure there's still some uh, soles of shoes or bottles or something like that that's still there.
Oh, I'm sure there is. I know that it's a place that's a lot more frequently visited now than it used to be. So people are going to want souvenirs and stuff like that. But I mean, if you wanted to roam a little further around the area, I'm sure you'd find a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay, let's see now, Leo. Before we get on to the next little thing, let me take him off there. Let's take a look at the. Well, I said take him off there. I guess he didn't do it. Let's do it this way then. I can get you out there, Val.
But
Okay.
the question that I have about this, though,
Uh-huh.
it is he was born American.
Yes, he was.
So what was he doing? Why was he being drafted by Canada?
Well, my understanding was his mom and dad were Americans, but he was actually born in Canada.
No,
So,
it was the other way around.
oh,
I
was it?
think because he was born in Somerville, Massachusetts.
Well,
So he
I wonder if they
but
had dual citizenship or something.
that's the only thing that I can think of is they must have had dual citizenship. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made any sense
No.
for him to even be able to be. Uh, I got to see what that is. That's driving me nuts.
Well,
The word for the Canadian draft.
let's check the outside cam, which is this is a little. If you're joining us late, this is a little experimental thing that we're doing. I still got to work out the kinks, but basically, I set up another camera that we can view that shows the outside, and we're getting the sunset as you can see about what time it is here. The railroad track goes right down through here, which has not been used in well over 10 years. We get deer, bear, and all kinds of stuff going up down through there. This is my back deck. Uh, all this is mountains right through here and up through here. I've been all over those. Now on this side over here, there's actually a small cave, and we've heard some unusual sounds going up that way. It's pretty neat.
Now, what we need to have happen is a big old 9 foot
Walking
male
back.
male white Bigfoot, not just any Bigfoot, but a white one. Walk right,
Well, I
right
got a
through
big
there.
apple tree off to the left your way, the big apple tree. It's loaded with apples. So then right across this railroad track, there's actually one or two walnut trees, which sometimes the bears get over there and eat the walnuts. So, which is kind of cool. And we do have some dogs out here, security system, but the bear don't pay no mind to them whatsoever. So that's a little thing we're trying to make our show a little bit, maybe a little interesting. I don't know if anybody else does this kind of thing or not because I don't watch a lot of shows. Hmm.
No, and same here. People ask me, "Did you see this show? Did you see that show?" No, I really, unless a friend contacts me and says, "Can you, specifically watch this show?" Then, but I really don't watch a lot of podcasts and stuff. But anyway, the word is conscription. It's the same thing. But
Well, we're going to continue our talk about hermits. Excuse me. If you join me late, I'm still having some sinus issues due to having COVID, but I'm feeling okay. Uh, the Appalachian Mountains, it has a long history of hermits, uh, various tales of hermits and stuff living along the Appalachian Mountains. I can actually remember as a kid, this hermit was probably it was more modern hermit, but we would drive toward Harlan, and there was this guy that had a little bitty old, I mean, a real small. I guess it was a pull trailer. I mean, it wasn't as big as this room I'm in. Uh, and he had the big long beard, and we would go by there, and we'd all. He was just known as the Hermit, and he lived there for many years. And occasionally you go by and you'd see him coming out or going in or out there piddling around. And it was at the base of a. It was in a field, and it's kind of at the base of a mountain. Uh, had a little old white, little bitty small white pull camper, and he lived there for man a long time. And he kind of, in some ways, he remind you of this guy here a little bit. Probably had the beard and stuff. Uh, but once he passed away, I guess some of his heirs or whatever got the land, and they eventually moved the camper, and they got in there and logged, and I know where the area is still at roughly, but yeah, he was always known as the Hermit. That's just what we knew him as. I don't know if Jimmy Blanton's still in the chat, but Jimmy probably can remember it too. It's right there at Sookie Ridge, kind of, if I remember correctly. I think that's what it's called. But just before you go up Sookie Ridge, about there, about where the animal clinic is, it was off to the right out in that field. Jimmy might remember it. He's from our area. But yeah, I remember, as a kid, we'd ride by there, and your parents say, "That's where the Hermit lives," and that's where the Hermit lives. And then you're going through there, and there's where the Hermit lives. There's the Hermit. You can see him come out. It's kind of exciting for a kid. Hey, I'm seeing the Hermit, and never seen nobody over there. Never seen no cars or anything like that over in there that I can recall, which is unusual during that time, anyway. All right, let's talk about some other hermits. Most of these ones I'm fixing to tell you about are from this is reports from the 1980s. I think I can't remember the publication. It was a well-known publication that did a small piece about hermits. One of them was called the Utah Hermit. This hermit was 70 years old and lived near Monticello, Utah, in a nearly inaccessible 2-room shack. He visited town monthly, except in the winters, for provision, living off a very small pension that he drew. And then we have one called the Minnesota Hermit. And this one is interesting because it was a woman. She was 76-year-old, and she was a former nurse. And she lived in a log cabin near a place called Knife Lake. She lived there year-round by herself. 76-year-old nurse, a woman. So it's not just men who become who wants to get away from it all. Sometimes women want to get away from it all too.
And a lot of times it's not. These aren't people that are necessarily running from anything. I mean, we know people that have lived in the woods for 20 years and stuff because they were running from different things, from the law, or draft dodgers and stuff like that. But sometimes people just have enough, and they're completely content living that way, and I can't say I blame them.
Oh no, that's my. You talk about a forever home. My forever home is back in the middle of nowhere with its own, with of course lots of forest, but also a fairly sized pond. Maybe an acre, 2 acres, and that I can't even hear a car go by the road. That's to me, that's my forever home.
Yep.
What's interesting about this though? This lady was a nurse, so she probably had her fill of people and drama and sickness and all that kind of stuff. So she was probably ready to get away and escape. Let's see what we got here. The next person his name was Arthur Darwin, and this one is really cool. He lived in the Everglades National Park in Florida. In 1945, at the age of 70, he built a small hut, and would remain in the park until his death in 1977. From 1945 to 1977. And he died at the age of 112. That's probably the oldest person I know of living around here that's in the United States, 112. And to think that they lived out in the Florida Everglades. And when I was researching about him a little bit, there was a big hurricane coming, well, I guess in the 50s or 60s, and he lived through it out there in his little hut.
Well, I mean, he was doing something right to live that long, but he's not eating out there, you wouldn't be eating the garbage that we eat. I mean, the things that we just, even to go and buy a cut of meat, where the trash that's in that now with hormones and all that, they're out there surviving on venison and stuff like that. And so it doesn't surprise me that they'd generally be in good health.
Well, another thing that was interesting about this guy too, he actually had served in the war, and after the war, I guess he just maybe didn't want to be around people because of whatever reason, maybe made him nervous or whatever, and he moved into this Everglades National Park. And to touch on something that you're talking about what we eat nowadays, excuse me, um, what people may not know, and I don't know why I remember stupid facts sometimes. I've seen some reports about meat that we eat, and if we eat meat that has been fed grain, that it has a certain chemical in it that's bad for us. Or if we eat a meat that's been on grass and free range, that it has a different hormone in it that is good for us. And of course, almost everything we get now is fed grain and pinned up and that type of stuff. And that's they say it contributes to heart disease. That you're better off if you can get the ones that's been grass fed and had open free range. That it's actually healthier for you. So I don't know why I remember stupid stuff like that.
The problem is, though, is to buy free range anything, generally, you're going to pay a free range price for it. And
Yeah.
right now is not a time where people
No.
can afford to do it.
Well, Guy comes up here and Bigfoot's with us and stuff like that. He has uh, some laying hens, and they're basically free range, roaming in his yard, which is chickens is not too bad to do, and lay eggs. And you get these, the eggs are going up too. So anything like that is a little better for you. I actually had some here at the house. Someone that gave us some free range eggs, and one thing that I noticed because the chickens, they instead of eating um, chicken feed all the time, they're eating bugs and things like that, and the yolk and the egg is actually much richer in color and stuff like that, and they taste, to me, I thought they taste fine. My wife has a hard time with it, but it's the idea more than it is the egg. Same thing with squirrel, I guess. I don't really. I like to eat squirrel or coon or raccoon or whatever. But in her mind, it's I guess where she was raised in the city. Uh, Maybe they're they fed them there in their driveway or whatever. Which now we got them now. I don't do any hunting myself. I mean, I'm glad I know how to do that. But we have squirrels that actually there's one dead out in the road where it came over to our mulberry tree and it either didn't make it back or didn't make it back over.
I don't know what it is with this car. Animals seem to want to try and commit suicide,
Man,
and they've been doing it now for a whole year, and I've never. It's like the George Costanza thing on Seinfeld. We have a deal with we thought we had a deal with the birds, with the pigeons. We looked the other way on so. But I have birds trying to commit suicide at the front of my car, and some of them have been successful, and it really friggin' bothers me because I don't kill anything to the point of it gets annoying to Becca, where I'll go and take a spider and carry it outside and let it out rather than kill it.
man,
And
I don't like spiders.
well, my grandmother was killed by a spider, so I'm not a big fan. But if it's not a poisonous spider and it's not hurting anything, I just put it outside. But
Some people go their whole life and they never hit a deer or anything like that. And I can remember growing up, I've hit a dog or two, but man, my wife has hit two deer, a coyote, probably something else too. I mean, she's been rough on that car. That car's been tough, buddy.
well, I don't know what it is though. I don't. They just do dumb stuff in front of my car. I slow down to I do what I can to avoid it, and I'm glad that I almost hit a dog, but he would have actually technically been hitting me because he was about to run into the side of my car. So I'm glad that I kind of saw ahead what was happen, and there was kids playing on the side of the road, and the dog was excited, so I already had my foot on the brake ready to go. But it's just animals that just want to die on my car, and I don't know why.
Well, I think they're magnets for my wife. I mean, they go right toward it. I've got one more hermit story, and most people will not recognize the name of the hermit. It was called Mum the Hermit. Most people, this story was probably in the late 1800s, along around 1880, 1883, somewhere like that. Uh, the story of Mum the Hermit is also known as the Kentucky Wild Man. I know people have heard about the capture of the Kentucky Wild Man, and everybody assumes that that was a Bigfoot. Uh, and the description of the gentleman uh, would make, if you just, I just gave you the description about his long hair and how coarse and all that kind of stuff was, and how he was stinky and that type of thing, you might think he was a Bigfoot, which I think that's the prevailing story about the Kentucky Wild Man, was that it was a Bigfoot that was captured. But I actually done a story on this back in 2018, I guess. Excuse me, and it's on our website if anybody wants to read the complete story. But I want to give you a little bit overview of it, a little bit, anyways. Uh, Mum the Hermit, he got his name because when he first actually was living out in the woods, if he would see anyone, he would say, "Mum's the word. Mum's the word." Uh, in other words, he didn't want them to tell about him. Is how I took it. He didn't want people to go out and tell about him being back there. Uh, so that's how they become known as Mum the Hermit. That was according to the newspaper article. He lived in what they said was Paducah County, but there is no Paducah County in Kentucky, which means he probably lived in Paducah, Kentucky, which is McCracken County. Munn lived in an old pine hut, and I think I might have a similar picture of that. Let me see here. Actually, I do. Let me throw that up there for you. Yeah, yeah, it was similar to this. This is not the actual hut, but it's very close. This hut here was actually from 1922 is when this was made. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. It's kind of neat. How many Bigfooters would run across that and think it was Bigfoot now? A bunch of them.
Yep.
But said he lived in this particular area for 5 years or more, but they've seldom seen him. It was also that he said that he later abandoned the pine hut and moved into a cave under a ridge known as Lizard Rock. Lizard. And here's kind of the funny thing. He said that sheep and cattle would go missing from the area, and they would track the sheep and cattle to his cave, but they never would see the sheep or the cattle again. They never did find anything of it. And after he moved into the cave, I think his mental faculties kind of went bad on him. When he would see people, he would run away when he was out in the forest. And these two men, it seemed like their name was, one of them's last name was Boyd, and one of them was named Henry Boyd and James something other. They actually set a trap and captured this guy, which is really odd. And that's where the Kentucky Wildman story kind of comes from, where they captured him and how the newspaper picked up on it, and they just done a little small side like article about what he looked like as far as his hair and covered in hair and his beard and how long it was and the color and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of where the Kentucky Wildman captured Kentucky Wildman kind of thing come from. But the two men who captured him, uh, that took like 2 days of them kind of coming around the cage to get to where he wouldn't freak out. And by this time, the guy has got to where he can't even really talk. It's just mostly grunts and things like that, which also lends more maybe to the Bigfoot thing. But the whole idea these two men had, they had been in contact with P.T. Barnum uh, about selling him to the circus, and they were on their way to New York. They took him to New York to meet P.T. Barnum, and I guess sell him to to P.T. Barnum to take around the world or whatever, and and to I guess make a sideshow freak out of him or something.
They trapped him and then tried to sell him.
Yeah, they put him in a suit. If I remember the story correct, it's been a while since I really studied it over. They put him in a suit that was way too big for him, and put him on a train and took him to New York. And he couldn't really talk or anything like that. I mean, just grunting sounds and things like that. So, and I don't remember how it actually, if they actually end up selling him to P.T. Barnum, but my understanding was they already had an agreement for him. Uh, or at least they had an agreement to meet and talk about him, maybe show him to him or whatever. But P.T. Barnum would have been a fellow who would have been interested in something like that. The feral man, wild man, whatever you want to call him. But a lot of people see the headline of the Kentucky Wild Man captures the Kentucky Wild Man, and they think it's Bigfoot, but it's really the guy. He was a dude. It was a man. I'm not sure there's a full story about where he came from or what made him, do what he did. But that's
the pictures that I've not the drawings that I've seen of the Kentucky Wild Man. There's a lot more hair on the arms and shoulders, and the hair's kind of sticking out straight. But that's people trying to turn him into Bigfoot, though.
Sure. Well, we still see that nowadays. Trying to turn people into Bigfoot. Every time something unusual happens, it's automatically Bigfoot.
Well, but then you got to remember that there are people out there that claim that they have 2% Bigfoot DNA in them. So
this is true. This is true. All right, let's see what else we got here, Leo. Let's see if we can do this. I don't know. That's all we got as far as the hermits go. We've covered the recent news about the Bigfoot murder thingamabobs, and people being taken.
The murder thingamabobs.
Yeah, well, I mean, you find people dead in a tent, and people trying to kidnap 10-year-old girls out on these trails, and oh man, it's a weird world sometimes.
Well, I'll be honest with you. After Tuesday, I told Dad and I told Becca too. I think I'm done. The foolishness has now come to the point where I'm now friends with someone who is former friends now, but who could possibly be a serial killer, and if he's not, is 99% chance, since they found, the remains today, that he's at least a murderer.
Oh yeah.
I'm not okay with that. It's hit me a lot harder than what it really should, because the thing is, we didn't have him up. He didn't come and visit. But these are things that we considered doing, and I thought, I've seen the absolute worst of the community, and I've seen a lot of really nice, fine people. But Tuesday made me say, you know what? It's too. This is too much. Even the social media thing, I wanted away from it. I wanted. I don't know. Just that one had that threw me for a loop, because how many times do you find out in your life that your friend is the complete opposite of what you thought? And
It's happened to me a time or two, but it hasn't been that extreme. People who were my friend, or I thought were my friend, turned out to be uh, not what they portrayed themselves as. Though anybody just join us, that is the extra camera we've been tinkering around with that shows the outside view. It's almost dark here now, so you still see the sky. But yeah,
well, yeah. I mean, I've had plenty of people, and everybody does in their life, that run into phony people that would just stab you in the back of it for a nickel. But when you get involved in someone that you think is basically killed. Yeah, she was 18, but to me, that's
kid.
when I was 18, it wasn't. I didn't think of it as a child, but at 45, 18 is still a kid, because you're not. You
Well,
know,
I made this statement where we had talked about this, and some people may have seen it. Leo and I have been around this game for a long time, and sometimes we try to warn people without being too aggressive with it. That you can't trust everybody. You watch some people, and a lot of times we get hit with that. We're just being jealous. We're just running people down, but that's not true. We've seen this. We I know, and I know Leo knows this. There's several prominent people in the Bigfoot community right now that if you knew what me and Leo knew about them, you would not give them the time of day. And that's not being mean or jealous or anything like that, because these people are, even though they're prominent people, you don't really see them much on TV or anything like that. One of them you do, but uh, if you knew what we knew about them, you wouldn't give them the time of day. You wouldn't follow them for 1 second. Like Leo talked about before, but sometimes these conferences, there's stuff that goes on at conferences that can be unreal. Everything from basically sleeping around with each other, orgies type stuff, were drugs, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, I've been involved with several conferences, and I'm not really seeing a whole lot of that going. I'm seeing a little bit of the partner stuff going, where somebody maybe hooks up or something like that. But and I've seen a little bit of the drug stuff too, where people share a few pills. But uh, I'm telling you, some of these folks that people are following are not good people.
there and we're not talking, sitting around after the conference and smoking a joint here. We're talking, you know,
Cocaine, meth.
we're, the one that I with the first one that I became aware of was Coke being sold as the conference was going on. People were walking out one by one buying Coke out of a Squatchmobile. So, but no, when people say we're being jealous, what do we have to be jealous of? Neither one of us has uh, exactly failed at this. I think we're both pretty good at what we do. We've been very fortunate that way. There's nothing to be jealous of. And but the other thing too is I've always hated people that I don't like thievery. And when you rip somebody off their money, that's thievery.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see these idiots that charge people money to go out just to con them, and then the people are, they're out of their money and they've got nothing but a sad story to tell, that really, really bothers me. And the
Uh,
thing is, it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Tony Harris asked a question about who were we talking about earlier. We're talking about a friend of ours who we both know through social media, who was recently arrested for a 2016 murder. Leo had actually invited this guy up to his. He's a researcher as well. Up to go researching. We didn't say his name or anything, but the young lady that he killed was 18-year-old, I think, and they have some tape confessions of him while he was incarcerated for, I think, selling dope or something, about talking about the body. Well, Leo gave us new information just a while ago that earlier tonight that they actually found what they think is her body today. And it's somebody we know, somebody I've talked to quite a bit on email, Messenger and things like that. Uh, uh, that just kind of got us off into talking about how some of these researchers, me and Leo, like we say, we've been around. I've been at this about 30 years, but I've really been on it social wise probably a good 15, 20. Uh, for years, I didn't really put anything out there. And Leo has been around for 20, 25 years. He's seen a lot of stuff. We know a lot of dirt on people. We know a lot of the backroom deals that goes on. People who have been paid to come to conferences and lie. People who have been paid to pull hoaxes. And some of these people are prominent people in the Bigfoot community. And no, we don't name them. We try to warn people to be careful of who you follow and who you put your trust in. Because everybody, man, there's a lot of shady people in the Bigfoot community. I'm telling you, I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. And well, like we done a show a couple of weeks ago about one guy who looked at Bigfoot as a type of religion. He was actually a serial killer, killed several people. Uh, we know people in the community now that their groups are almost cult-like. That their followers and stuff, if the guy said, go outside and shoot your gun up in there 3 times, they would run outside and do it if they had a gun. We know people like that right now in the community, and we don't. I mean, yeah, we could name names and we could show you screenshots and we could show you emails and things like that. But I don't want to do that. I'd rather just tell you to be careful who you follow. Everybody is not a real Bigfoot researcher. Uh, Everybody's not honest, and everybody is. Some people is actually dangerous, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and people always ask me, well, why don't you say who it is? How about you just be careful of everybody, and then you won't have to worry about who it is. So, because I'm not going to sling
Right.
mud unless there's mud slung at me first. But if I think that people are actually in danger with someone, then obviously I'm going to get in touch with them and say, when you go out with this person, watch your wallet because she's known to rob you blind. And believe me when I tell you that nothing's going to happen in the woods, because there will be mind speak, and mind speak will be telling that person that they can't have a sighting today because they're not in the area, but don't go to the area where they're at because they don't want you to, and you're out all your money, nothing happened, and you got screwed. Those type of things are the ones that I hear about the most, and people talking that they have all of this stuff going on. They pay their money to go into the woods with these people, and plus a fee. I mean, their money to get there, plus the fee to go in, and they get in there, and the guy's nothing but a lazy bum, and there's no anything anywhere, and so they're out all of that money. So I'm not going to name names. So just be careful of everybody, and that way, we don't need to name names.
Wendy Wong was asking if this what we're talking about, the guy got arrested, if it's on the news. Yes, it has been on the news.
Yeah.
There's several websites and things that are covering this. You can actually find. I've seen some of it on YouTube videos. The guy's name's out there, but out of respect for him and his family and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to put it out there to the 100% convict the guy or whatever. But
that's the big thing too right now is, you got to go by innocent until proven guilty, even when you don't. Because see, people always say, no, it's innocent until proven guilty. Well, not from what I've seen. My whole life, that's not the case from what I've seen.
And the evidence looks bad for this guy.
And that's the thing. I have my own personal feelings, but I'm not going to hang him yet. That's for the courts to do that. I'm done with him. But I mean, because all he did for 3 years was live a second life and completely put on a production to be able to talk about Bigfoot with me. So I hate him for that alone, but I hate what he did, what it looks like he did. But it's naming him, me naming him isn't gonna,
At the time, if my calculations are not incorrect, at the time he would have been roughly 52, 53-year old, and if it's true that he killed this 18-year-old girl, uh, and they've not been able to find her body until now, and they think it's her anyways, and she was killed in 2016. Uh, so, it's out there on the news if you look around a little bit. And, that kind of led us over into talking about researchers and being careful. And this guy was a researcher. He put forth that he was a Bigfoot researcher. But you got to be careful. And when you hang yourself with the Bigfoot researcher tag, you need to make sure that you're really a Bigfoot researcher. I know of some people who are not. They're more Bigfoot enthusiasts. One person in particular that I heard about, uh, he don't really go in the woods and look for Bigfoot, but he watches all the TV shows and he reads books and website articles and things like that. Well, if you're getting the majority of your information off of TV shows, you're getting bad information most of the time. If you're reading the majority of blogs and things like that about Bigfoot, you're getting a whole lot of bad information because, again, they're being written by people who actually don't get out in the mountains. They get out for a photo op or something like that, and they go out some kind of little public trail and holler sick them a few times, and that's about it, and take a few pictures. So me and Leo I've always done it. I've cautioned people to be careful who you follow because everybody don't have, or not really, first of all, they're not really researchers, and some of them can potentially be dangerous. I know of situations where a very famous Bigfooter who actually has done films and things like that was invited into this guy who had activity on his property, and he'd been documenting. I'd seen some of the pictures, some of the videos, and he invited this guy in to film and check out his Bigfoot. Well, man, the guy really ran him off his own property, treated him awful. Uh, but that guy got a wake up call. He learned about the fellow. I tried to tell him. I said the guy's not on the up and up, man. But he wouldn't listen. He went ahead and said, "Oh, he's a nice guy," and he invited him in, and he ended up running him off his own property. And I know of a couple of people, different people that come in and done very similar things uh, to people. So you got to be careful who you invite to your Bigfoot area. Uh, Man, they'll steal your stuff. They'll. This one guy he actually even wanted to, I think, shoot one of them in the area. Wanted to kill one of the Bigfoot. So you got to be careful who you let into your areas and who you trust and follow.
And that's what I mean. This week it was when this happened. That was considering all the other stuff that I know of that I never really talk about, other than try to tell people to just be leery of this one or that one. But I mean, I can think of one person who has a absolutely huge group organization, an immense amount of equipment, but yet at the same time has a really bad reputation for when people do allow them on the property. All of a sudden, the property, the findings, all of this, the family who actually allowed it to happen and helped it happen are now called crazy kooks and are pushed, like you said, they're basically pushed out of their own property, and all the findings go to this one person who did nothing but walk in and take credit.
That's right, and they don't never give the original person any credit at all. I've seen that happen a few times. I've had that happen to me when dealing with TV shows. I would I would. They had a video that was several times. They had videos that they wanted help finding out who actually owned the video and where it came from. Well, I would do the work on this and give them the information and the witness, and sometimes it was my witness, anyways, because they kind of mined my signings map on our website, and a lot of times I would set up the meeting or the contact and all that kind of stuff, and they wouldn't give me credit at all for it, and I was doing the work. I was putting in the work, getting them what they need so they could do their show, and they wouldn't even give me I even asked for a credit at the end, just in the closing credits or something, and they wouldn't do it, so I had to quit helping them. And I didn't ask for money. I just said, hey, give me a thanks or something in the credits, and they wouldn't do it, so I quit helping them.
Yeah, I think I would too. You weren't asking for money; you were asking for a little acknowledgement. Not, yeah, I think I'd be quitting too. But
and at one time, they actually stole one of our witnesses. They one of our uh, one of our researchers took a witness to where they was having a meeting, and they act like they didn't. They was interested and got all the details, and they said, "Well, we're not going to have time to do it." Well, what they were doing was getting rid of our researcher and then contacting the guy separately to try to get him to do it. So, you know, that's how it works. That's why when we deal with TV shows, and I got a lot of people that uh, follow some of my work, and a lot of people that I communicate with who potentially want to get on TV, and I always tell them you better be careful because I've dealt with these cats for a long time. Uh, uh, they'll promise you the moon and tell you stuff, and then when it comes out, it's totally different than what they portrayed it to you as. And if they can, they'll make you look like a silly goon if they can or if they want to. But they'll promise you the moon.
well, they said they certainly duped me, but I got paid.
Well, at least you got something out of it. But no, I hadn't really thought much about what happened to you, but I've told many people over the years who would be contacted by this entity or that entity. I said, well, just be careful because they'll tell you everything in the world to get you to agree, and then they'll kind of change it on you once you get there. I've seen that. Well, I've seen that happen a lot to people.
And well, basically, what they did to me is they agreed to everything. I basically had one demand, and that was, um, I'll do this, but I'm not going to refer to them as just an animal. I'm going to refer to them as people because that's what I know. So I don't know about what other people are experiencing in that, but they're people. They're not human, but they're people. So they agreed to allow me to present it that way. The problem is that's not the way they presented it. They spun it all around to me saying they weren't Bigfoot at all. They were some type of caveman, and but I'm the idiot that signed the contract that gave them the right to do that. So it was my fault, but it's a few years back, so it's over and done with. And like I said, in the end, after 11 months, I got paid. So it was 11 months of waiting to get paid. 11 months.
Wow.
Yep. But the thing, like what you were saying about researchers and enthusiasts, it seems like, and it's not the idiots that we were just talking about, but there seems to be a belief within the Bigfoot community that there's something wrong with just being an enthusiast. There's not.
No, not at all.
It's like everybody that, like I said before, everybody that joins a group. Well, I had a sighting back in '62. I had a sighting in '89. If everybody in my group had a sighting that they said that they've had, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them have, but they feel like they don't belong in a group unless they've had a sighting, and that's not the way it is. They feel like they don't get to say anything about anything if they're an enthusiast.
Well, I like enthusiasts. That's the people who are going to seek out people like me and you and find out hopefully good information.
Well,
So
it's
we
not.
always,
It's not. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing wrong
not at all.
with it at all. But it's the Bigfoot community seems to have people convinced that it's a bad thing.
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't even mind. Uh, I guess you call them armchair researchers, people who don't really go in the woods, but they research through the internet and citing databases and things like that. Sometimes they provide real good information as well. And I understand that not everybody can physically go out into the woods, and the time's probably coming where I won't be able to either to get a haircut too. Uh,
Yeah, but I mean, as far as armchair researchers and that, again, I'm not going to mention any names, but but the people that I know that I respect are the ones that come right out and say, "I don't go out. I just love this stuff."
Watch out,
So
you're being attacked. Oh, oh, it's your cat.
uh, that's Ashley. Uh, they say I don't go out. I just love this stuff. I go for a walk in the woods now and again if I can, but and but they're historians. They're the ones that keep track of all the stuff that we know about, but we don't remember what date it happened and all that. We can go to them and they'll say it happened this date in 1982, and this is where it happened. There's nothing wrong with that, but just be upfront about it. That's all.
uh, well, me and you both been around long enough that there's so much information that so many stories we've heard and read and researched that without a doubt we've forgot quite a bit. I don't know. As we get older, we'll probably forget more. But, so it's good to have people like that who does chronicle things, and I try. That's one of the reasons why I kind of use our website. And I feel like a lot of people miss a lot of good information because they don't go to our website. They go to something that's more that's something's got a hot stupid story about I found a skull, a Bigfoot skull in the mud, and it's a gorilla skull that the guy bought online for $30. Uh, and I gave him a hard time. Somebody got mad at me because I punched back a little bit on that. But it's idiots like that that make the field of Bigfoot hard. It makes it more difficult than what it should be. Uh, and I'm not against entertainment, but don't present it as something that is real and factual if you're doing it just for entertainment. And so I punched back a little bit, and somebody gave me a little bit of a hard time because I always take the high road, and I normally do take the high road. But sometimes it builds up, and I know Leo and myself, we both take this seriously. We abuse our body, and we spend our own money and massive amount of time out in the woods, and so sometimes it builds up on us when somebody does something. What I think is stupid is to burying a fake skull and trying to pass it off as a possible Bigfoot skull and stuff like that. And the guy didn't need to do it. He's got 20,000 subs or 20 million subs on YouTube. He didn't have to do that kind of stuff. It's just a bunch of baloney to me. But anyways, with that said, I hope people do go to our website and mine it for the stories and information. We've done a lot of interviews over the years, and we got some changes coming to our group. We're fixing to have a influx of uh, quite a few members. We're changing a few things up that will increase our uh, our area that we can cover, and it basically give us more people out in the field associated with Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and everything. Uh, so look for that in the near future. And now I guess we said we would end this with some question and answers. I guess if anybody has questions in the chat room, feel free to ask away about Bigfoot, UFOs, meaning of life. I don't care if I can answer it, I will. And also thanks to Rebecca for being in the chat room and monitoring the chat room for us tonight. Wendy Wong said she seen something when she was around 11. Around 11. I've been interested ever since. Are you speaking in the sense of Bigfoot type thing? Uh, a lot of people get involved with Bigfoot after a sighting. For me, it was a natural progression. My first interest was UFOs because I'd seen something in the sky when I was a kid, made the news and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it was a UFO or something. I don't know. It might have been just a meteor exploded or something, but it still got me interested in things up in the sky, and eventually led to Bigfoot. But a lot of people do have a sighting or see something unusual and they can't explain it, and it kind of gets them jump started in doing Bigfoot, looking into the phenomenon of Bigfoot, at least.
And that happened to me in 1985, but I didn't realize it was Bigfoot related until after my first actual sighting. But we had rocks. I had a rock throwing encounter when I was a kid, and had we had any knowledge of Bigfoot, I'm sure I would have been very, very into it. I think that would have been really cool. But up until my actual sighting, and then years after that, I'm reading about. I think the first time I heard about rock throwing was a thing on other than the few things described in books. I think it was on a TV special. Guy in a canoe um, was having rocks thrown from the bank. Now it wasn't hitting his canoe; it was just all around his canoe, which is what happened to us. We weren't getting hit by the rocks. There was like 5 of us there. We weren't getting hit by the rocks. They were just landing all around us. Now, but had we known anything back then, I'm sure I would have gotten into Bigfoot back when I was a kid, rather than when I was 20. But uh, we didn't even consider that.
Well, that's me. My first encounter, me and my dad was coon hunting. I was probably 15, 16 year old. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I of course figured it out later. But yeah, that was a scary night actually, because this thing followed us, and our dogs were scared to death. Uh, uh, but I did, like you say, you didn't at the time. I didn't. I'm sure I knew what a Bigfoot was, but I didn't think there were any Bigfoot here where I was at. I thought it was, and TV still portrays them that way, that they're only in California and Washington and places like that. But there's not, they're not in Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or anywhere like that. And God forbid, they're not down in Florida. It's too hot. That's
Hmm.
kind of how TV portrays it, and that's just not true. Uh, we actually talked about Bigfoot population in a previous show, and I think there are a lot more of these than people actually think. And I think in most areas, especially like here in the mountains of Kentucky, I think the population is actually on the increase, and not the decrease as some people would, say.
Yeah, but with everything with this, it's got to be all doom and gloom, all scary, all horror.
Hmm.
That's another thing that drives me nuts is the people that it's just all horror all the time, and uh, immediately my mind goes to, if Bigfoot wanted to do that, I don't care if they're only 3 years old. If Bigfoot wanted to catch you, they'd catch you. If they wanted to kill you, they'd kill you. You wouldn't have survived it. So, how many more horror stories can people listen to without going, well, wait a minute? If they really wanted to do that, they'd have no trouble. Like, why do they not clue into that?
Well, just like we was talking about the serial killers, and some of those people were getting people off these secluded trails, and of course, I'm sure that some of those events have been described as they were taken by Bigfoot, or Dogman got them or something like that. And no, it was old Joe Bob that's been hiding out and killing people out along the Appalachian Trail for the last 20 years, uh, which we have a lot of people still yet missing in this area. Most of them are not necessarily from a hiking standpoint or in the mountain standpoint, but from people who, mostly girls, was kind of a stretch. I kind of looked into it before. I kind of felt like we had a serial killer who was, in my opinion, was probably a truck driver, because where the people were missing, down through Tennessee. So if old Joe Bob back in the mountains somewhere, it's an easy victim a lot of times. And we covered that one where they was the people were old. They were like in their 70s or 80s or something. He killed them or something like that. Wendy Wong said she seen a huge figure bent over in a neighbor's garden. Stood up. It was huge, way bigger than an adult. A large, dark figure. I turned and ran, yelling for friends, and it was dusk, a little darker. Well, that's interesting. You bring up about a garden. I took a report from the lady was a school friend of mine for years and years and years. She's married now and been married for years and got kids and stuff. And she knew I was into Bigfoot, so she had something happen. This is probably back around 2015, maybe somewhere like that. Around here, if you got a garden, usually you're in your garden early in the morning, late in the evening. That's just the way it is. You're checking your stuff. And they had went out late that evening and checked their garden, make sure everything was, cool. And they went back out the next morning, and all the corn had been pulled up, and all the ears of corn had been pulled off the corn stalks, and all the corn had been ate, and all the corn cobs had been stacked up in nice little piles along the way. And I think there was some watermelons and squash and things like that was all gone overnight now. And the only thing that was in there was these big humanoid tracks that was about 15, 16 inches long. We've got a story on that too. When I was doing my presentations and things, that was one of the stories that I would relay, because the foot track is you can actually see it pretty well. And that's one that's on our website as well. But what would come in and overnight eat, so many rows of corn and all the squash and several different items. It just ate every bit of it and then stack up the little corn cobs. So it's not unheard of, going back to what Wendy was saying, it's not unheard of that Bigfoot would raid a garden. It's an easy snack for them.
Yep.
Same way with apple trees. I know there's numerous reports of Bigfoot taking apples.
Yeah, and speaking of apple trees, well, we know Dad is going to be part of the film.
Sure.
When you hear one of his odd happenings as far as apple trees, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, we have talked about it a little bit. For those that may not know, Leo and I are working on a Bigfoot film. We've got some witnesses we're going to talk to. We've got with Leo's dad's going to be in it. He's had some things going. It's going to be interesting, and we're going to actually do have some field research and stuff in it as well. Me and Leo get out quite often. I've not been able to the last little bit, of course, because I've had good old COVID. Thank you, China. And so I've not been able to get out a whole lot the last few weeks. But I did go to my gifting area. And of course, things were changed and gone, like the food. And I've been taking these. I don't know if you've seen them. You can get the little half can like a Pringles. I like those. They're good. So I eat those, and then I take the Pringles can and I'll fill it up with something. Sometimes it's cheese puff. Sometimes it's caramel corn. Whatever. And whatever is taking this food is taking the whole canister. They're not knocking the canister over and eating it. They're not grabbing it and taking it 10 feet behind where I'm gifting and turning it all pieces and eating it. It's totally gone. You can't find it nowhere, because I looked. But I've had a lot of things going on like that in the gifting area. I've had some wood knocks and things like that when I've been in there gifting. That's a rarity, really. I've only had a few wood knocks in this area. So I'm going to keep doing this. I've been doing it pretty consistently for the last, maybe 2 years, Leo. I've really been doing it.
You really got into trying to make a pattern out of it over the last couple of years, yeah?
Yeah, I tried it a little bit at the first, and I'd set up a game camera and I'd cut up some apples, and I see these game cameras things of the deer's eating apple, and even one where I think it was a crow flew in and took a whole big giant apple and just flew away with it. I thought, man, uh, there's no way of knowing what's going on. So I kind of lost heart in doing gifting, and then Leo had some very good success with gifting. So it kind of, I said, well, I'm going to try a different approach. And I talked to Leo and found out some of the things that he did, and then I tried to replicate them here because we have both found very similar structures, and we've had very similar events happen. And him in Canada, me in Kentucky, a lot of similar structures and stuff like that. So, and I started doing some things with the toys, and sometimes the toys are just knocked over, which you would assume was probably a squirrel, chipmunk, or whatever. And then sometimes you come in and the toys are gone, totally gone, a whole bunch of them. It's just, I can't put my finger right on it. It's Bigfoot, but I don't know what else could it be, unless somebody's coming in and stealing them behind me.
You, like I said, man, you're basically doing everything that I started off with, and the things that I've tried and it has failed miserably and all that. Um, you've got two options here. Well, you've got three options. You can stay in denial about what's going on, or you can accept that it's either Sasquatch or people. You already know it's not people because you're not finding people tracks there.
That's true.
But what tracks are you finding there?
I am finding Bigfoot tracks there.
I
And
rest my case.
this is an area where I found, and literally in this area within a quarter mile, I guess, maybe a mile tops, I've literally found hundreds of Bigfoot tracks, hundreds over the last several years. I've had vocalizations there. Uh, I've had them holler at me several times from distances. Would not. So, and the thing got me when the first canisters that I used, I actually used the peanut canisters, the kind of planters, kind of round and little squatty. And the first one disappeared completely. I think I had caramel corn in it, if I remember correctly. And I'm documenting all this. I'm taking before and after pictures and all that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to be consistent when I go. Well, the next canister I put out, which was another nut canister, was obviously obvious that a bear got it because it had puncture wounds in the side of the can, and it was right there on just the other side of the stump. On the other side of the rock. But all these other canisters are disappearing, and I'm not finding them anywhere in the area. And I cover a lot of the area because it's kind of certain areas are kind of swampy there. And I look for tracks. I always make the big circle and look for tracks, and I found all kinds of structures over the years there. So it's very, very, very possible that Bigfoot is involved in this. And I've had things. There's a big dead log there too, and I've been taking these marbles. I have a hard time with that word for some reason, and putting marbles out there, and they're disappearing. Something's taking the marbles and taking off with them. And then I've had some other weird stuff too, and it's all documented in photographs and it's in video. And some of these videos and pictures I actually share in the YouTube members only section. Some of them, not all of them. I got a whole bunch more. Uh, and Leo's kind of my go-to on some of that stuff because he's had such a wonderful experience with gifting, and he knows a lot about it. So, and we talked about before that certain foods they won't take in my area because the only thing I can assume is because it is not something we normally find around here. Uh, Recently, I put out some bananas, and I've never had any luck with bananas. And I only took these bananas because they were really close to spoiling here at home, and nobody was eating them. So I said, well, I'm going to take these bananas. So I took the bananas, and well, something took the bananas, totally gone, no pills, nowhere, just totally gone. Where as if a squirrel or something come down there and ate these bananas or whatever. You figure the peel would still be there, but there nothing is totally gone. So now you tell me what takes a banana and takes it somewhere else and eat it.
I've been trying to tell you for 2 years, but you won't listen.
Well,
You're in denial. I mean, you're having. I said from the start, the one you're going to have patience, and the other thing too, I think that people misunderstand about when you get something going with this, is people think that every time I go in the woods, um, there's all this activity, and they just come out and dance for me,
oh
and oh man, it is not like that at all.
no.
Nowhere's near. I mean, there's a certain things that happen frequently, but then we'll just completely stop and won't happen for a month. So there are certain things that are more frequent than others, but they're at no time are they coming out and dancing for me and juggling, and it's not the way it is. Gifting is can be an extremely tedious process, but once you start noticing the little things, those little things eventually lead to bigger things, and you, like in your case, you know when another animal comes in, because when animals go in and they eat food like that, what they leave is a mess. They don't pick it up and take it with them. I mean, with the exception of some things, but overall, they come in, they eat right there, they make a mess. You know that animals have done it. But when you've got big footprints and your stuff is gone and there's no mess,
Yeah, I've had a lot of stuff missing from there. Some stuff has been missing from there probably close to a year now, and then I've had some stuff go missing and then show up a few months later. So now, does a bear pick up something, take it away for a month, and then say, "Hey, I think I'll take that back where I found it"? I don't think so. I mean, it would, it don't seem like something that a bear would do to me. So it's
well,
interesting, and what people may not realize is when we put out food, Bigfoot may not be through there for, let's say, 3 days. Well, in that 3 days, a bear may come through,
mhm.
and he'll tear everything up and make a mess and all kinds of stuff, and then he'll move on. So sometimes we understand that other animals do get food, and other creatures come by and get stuff, and we don't. That's why I want to be real cautious on saying, "Well, Bigfoot got it, Bigfoot got it." But I've got some stuff that's just unexplainable. That as some of it was, I know I told Leo about this before. One thing was a figurine, and it wasn't knocked over. It was picked up and moved so many feet and still setting up. I don't know of any animal that would do that other than a human or a Bigfoot. Maybe it was got lucky. A bear got lucky, and then but I doubt it. And I'm not seeing any really no bear tracks in this area. Occasionally I see a bear track, but not very often. So there's definitely something going on there. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing and hope it escalates into either sighting, vocals, or something. And I don't run any cameras in this general area around the gifting anymore. I pulled those out, and I don't do them there now. I will run cameras fairly close to the area, but not in that general area. Game camera, and people want to say that it's useless to run game cameras, and it's not. Even if you don't catch a Bigfoot, you get to see what other creatures are in the area. And I'm not talking about around your gifting area. I'm just talking about in general in the woods. I like to know what's out there, so it gives me kind of an idea. If I see a lot of bear, I know, well, there's enough food sources around here that a Bigfoot could live in this general area. And of course, I always want to catch a cougar. I'd like to catch one of them on game camera. I've not caught one on game camera. I've seen one while I was riding my ATV. They say we don't have them, but they're wrong again. We do have them.
It's the same thing here. It was the same thing in New Brunswick.
Well, see, they said that about bears for us for years, and us seeing bears. No, there ain't no bears around here. Ain't none. And us seeing bears. Of course, the population got so big now. You see bear, you're liable to see a bear anytime. Uh, but I did capture on game camera some black foxes, which is very rare. Got the white on the tail. I actually caught two of them the game camera. And believe it or not, if I believe I baited them in with peanut butter, a peanut butter jar, and they was running on logs and playing and stuff like that. I've seen a black bobcat, which is rare for this area, but Florida has quite a few black bobcats. And this was back when I was logging. Uh, I was walking the road, going out to get something or coming back, and it ran right out in the road, stopped and looked at me. A black bobcat. So I've seen a few things, even back when I was working and stuff, and in the logwoods, I've seen a few things.
Well, there's definitely a place for game cameras in Bigfoot research, but I mean, you're using it to find out like what's in the area and stuff like that, and that's not a waste of time. That's just good thinking.
And I did catch the one picture of Bigfoot in this.
And yeah, you're one of the few that have got them, and I can see why it happened.
And what people may not know, this is really close to the gifting area. And the reason I set this camera up was that I had a track line of over 30 some odd tracks, but there was more tracks there in that general area. But this was like 30 some right in a row, and it went right by this big pine tree, hemlock tree, some people like to call it. This pine tree, kind of a general broad term for us. And I set it up there, and I guess it just surprised him. I think that's the biggest thing is kind of surprising them on the game camera, because the game camera's field of view is kind of narrow. If you consider the whole mass area of the mountain, you're just really looking at a small spot. So what's the chances of it walking? And most game cameras are about 65 feet trigger. So he's got to walk within 65 feet and so many feet wide of the game camera to catch him. I've got like some elk and stuff like that on the game camera too, and quite a few things. It's kind of fun. I like looking at the animal videos. I had one new game camera I put out, and brand new, first time out, and a big bear tore all pieces. First time I couldn't use it no more out of that. I got it for parts. I could probably tape the batteries in it and stuff, but I don't know. That would probably let moisture in, and then it wouldn't last long.
Yeah, I remember the bear snacking on your camera there.
I got another good camera that a bear tore up, but I can use it. It just broke one of the things. It's a Browning camera, and I think that was the first camera I got that actually recorded sound. And I thought that was recording sound is kind of important as well. And I have left recorders and stuff out overnight and caught some unusual things. But having a game camera that does it, I mean, there's a chance that it could trigger, like a deer walk by and it triggers the game camera and it picks up a sound. It's farther away of maybe a Bigfoot or something. I mean, it'd be rare, but I'd rather have the opportunity, the possibility that could happen than not. So when I buy game cameras, I try to always get ones that record audio. And after I caught the Bigfoot on game cam, at that time I was always setting my game cameras to just take pictures. And after that episode, from there on out, I run them all on video. Don't just set your game camera to take pictures, put it on video. I got a couple of game cameras that actually do both. It'll take a picture and shoot like a 30 to 60 second video. It does both of them. So I set some of them like that if I can.
I own two $70 game cams, and they just fail at working in every way that they possibly can. If you're setting them up, they'll take pictures of you as you're walking away, and then not take another picture for the whole night. And if they do take anything, it's so pixelated. They're awful. And so I didn't. What I wanted to do was set them up at the place where we found the large teepee. Mm-hmm. Like when we go back there to do the measurements and stuff like that, and the other little experiment that we're doing for the film. I was going to take them and put them back there, and for basically the same reason what you were using yours for, get an idea of what's back there. So, but they're just not worth it. They're you get 2 or 3 half decent pictures of yourself walking away, but
Yeah. Now, without that game camera that I actually caught the Bigfoot on, if I'm not mistaken, that was like a $50 deal that you can get at Walmart, or I think I might have bought this one on eBay. Uh, well, Wild Game or Wild, I think that's the brand of Wild Game Camp or something. And hit some of the pictures are pretty good on hit, and of course sometimes you get the IR light is too bright, and you get a whiteout uh, effect where the picture is basically just almost all white. Uh, with this picture, I have a Bigfoot that I got. I think it was 2013. It was a very white, almost a complete whiteout picture, and I almost threw it away. Almost, cause through aggravation. And I thought, well, I'm gonna adjust the contrast on that just a little bit, see if there's anything back in the back. Well, I just barely touched it, and I could see the figure standing back there, and so I almost threw that picture away. And there's actually a picture before it. I don't remember what the time frame is on it. But it's not the time frame is not much. Where there's like a black shadowy mass that's just off the edge of the camera, and then the next picture is like it's standing back there looking back at whatever that was. It was just kind of interesting. That picture, for years I didn't. The picture that was prior, I never even thought nothing about it. I didn't even. I could see a blurry like thing on one side of the screen, and I didn't think nothing else about it. And then I found the Bigfoot in the second picture, but I forgot all about the blurry thing. It was whatever it was moving. And when I say blurry, it's not like it was standing there blurry. It was just moving. It's motion blur. So it's a very possibility that it went by that game camera and circled back around. But I don't know that. Just kind of fill in the blanks, kind of.
well, I always kind of thought that it probably, um, if that were the case, I think probably it didn't just plain didn't know when it walked by it, and the picture on the game camera is it going, it's noticing right then and there, or like what's going on here? Because I mean, I wouldn't put a game camera anywhere near pointing at a gifting area, but people always say, well, it can't be done on a game camera. It can. They make mistakes. They're not perfect. They make mistakes. And if they before they go and tear the damn thing down, they're going to have a look at it. So if you're lucky,
Yeah. I've not had any. I've not had any Bigfoot that I know of tear mine down. Now I had one that was turned, and I don't know what did it. It's like it was shooting one direction and it turned it around the opposite direction for some reason. I don't know. It could have been a deer or something hooked it with an antler and turned it, or a bear or whatever. But that was the only thing I had that was unusual, than a bear attacking one or something like that. But yeah, game cams can be effective on Bigfoot, I think.
they can. It all depends on how you use them and where you use them and what your goal is. But uh, overall, they're not stupid. They know. They see them there.
Hmm.
But like I said, they make mistakes. They're not perfect. So there's going to be times when they can be caught.
Well, on the day I set this game cam up and caught that one, if I'm not mistaken, actually had two game cameras. And when I was setting one of them up, is when I heard the Bigfoot talking, uh, and I was scared. I don't care. You're out in the middle of the forest, and you know there's Bigfoot in the area, but you don't really know. At the time, I didn't really know what maybe they was capable. And that's only been about 10 years ago. I didn't really know exactly what they might be capable of, or I know a lot more now than I did because I got out there. Uh, but I heard this talking, and it was scary because I couldn't see anything because there was a big laurel thicket there. Rhododendrons is what most people know that. It was just too thick to see, and it was close, and I could hear it talking, but it was just far enough away that I couldn't make out any words. But it was probably in a language that I couldn't understand anyway. And the thing is, as I went through there documenting these tracks and the events, I would hold the camera up and shoot myself documenting what I was finding. And I still to this day think that most likely the Bigfoot was mimicking what I was saying or doing, is what I think was going on. But man, I was pretty scared because it was close and I couldn't see it. And man, but I did put the game camera up, but I'd already put up the one that actually caught the guy so many days later or whatever when he caught him. Uh, but I'm fairly sure that one is still in the area because at that time he had been seen about 3 times over like a 2 or 3 week period. Uh, twice, twice right in that general area, and then once at another place at an old abandoned coal mine. Uh, so but he's not the only one there. I found tracks all the way up to like 22 inches, all the way down to about 8 inches.
Yeah, well, you got yourself a wide variety there,
There's
and
a bunch.
I think you've got a couple of family groups and then some. I think you've got a couple of family groups plus some passing through.
Well, I wondered. I know there's actually there's a nearby old coal mine. Used to years ago when they would uh, stop mining in the area, they would maybe push a little dirt up in front of it, and that was it. Now a lot of times they make them seal them plumb up so people won't go back in them. But these here are old enough that they're not sealed up. They just maybe have a little dirt pushed in front of them. And the one my dad seen was going in that general direction. Uh, for years, you couldn't really get back there unless you had a real good 4 wheeler. But I've been wanting to. I actually went to go back there one time recently, and there were some people back there deer hunting, which is a rarity on that side of the mountain. Uh, I wasn't expecting to see anybody, so I got back there and they had their truck there and they had their 4 wheeler off and they'd already went around the bank, around the mountain to deer hunt. And I normally don't get out a whole lot during deer season because I want the deer hunters to have, be able to get out and hunt, and I don't want to mess up their hunt. Here I am beating on trees and doing Bigfoot whoops and yells and them trying to do. I don't want to do that. And plus, another reason I don't really get out a whole lot during that time is I don't want to give away some of my areas. If they see me sitting in an area and then they see me coming out and I don't have a rifle and I don't have an orange on, I don't have an orange hat or anything, safety, they would probably say, well, he's not deer hunting. He's probably in there Bigfooting if they know me.
Yeah, well, the people, you have a little giggle at that, but a person has to protect their research area because there are people that will travel hundreds of miles to take over your research area. As crazy as, like we were talking earlier about all this foolishness that goes on, that goes on a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does. Uh, well, like guy come from Arkansas, uh, and he came. I think it was like 11-hour drive. But of course, he set it up first, and many of them knew each other a little bit. And we actually, when he came out, before he came, I told him, I said, man, I can't promise you we'll see anything or find anything, but I can take you to an area where I found stuff before. And we did. We found a lot of stuff, and actually had a sighting that day. So, uh, you know, it, but some people, like you say, will come in to an area. Uh, they'll monitor you. And I was sort of stupid at it when I first got online sharing stuff. I put out too much information, too much detailed information where people could go to it if they really wanted to, or sightings where they could really go. If somebody, had a recent sighting, I would put too much information there and they could actually go to the site. And I'm sure it probably happened. So I try to be a little more careful with the identity of the person and the location. I'd rather give a general area, at least for the first, if it's something that's fairly recent. I don't want to give the pinpoint accuracy on it because you get every yahoo in the world down there trying to look for a Bigfoot and mess it all up for the person who's put in the time.
Yeah, and the the people are bold. Like, they're bold. They'll say, "Where is this?" And I'll say, "Well, it's in Nova Scotia." Yeah, but where at? None of your business.
Yeah.
Where at? I told you the province, and that's all you're getting.
And I've had people do it. Where exactly is it there? I said, well, it's in Harlan County. Yeah, but where exactly in Harlan County? Once I've found a lot of stuff in Harlan County, I've found a lot of stuff in Bell County.
Well, that's when you say, "Well, you can't get there from where you're at. Have a nice day," and hang up.
Well, Leo, we are actually past our time, and I don't know if anybody else really liked the show tonight, but I enjoy doing stuff. I mean, we always get off on Bigfoot or UFOs or ghosts, because that's we have interest in that kind of stuff. But I actually like talking about true crime stuff, and like something unusual like we did tonight about hermits. And we only touched the surface on hermits. I mean, I just about guarantee you about every town has got a hermit tale if you want to dig just a little bit. People who have moved out away, basically, it's like the movie The Village, not Shyamalan. they move away from society and start their own thing, but they do it as an individual, not a group. I just about say every town has got a hermit story, and there's nothing wrong if wanting to get away from society. Sometimes I think we all could use a break from some of the garbage we were fed on TV and the news and all that kind of stuff. It just weighs your mind down, kills your energy.
That it does.
But I enjoy talking about weird stuff like that, and hopefully in future shows we can cover, which we're always going to do some Bigfoot stuff, and because that's what we do every day, basically of our life. We think about Bigfoot, but hopefully we can do some other shows about weird people, weird stories, or whatever. I enjoy that kind of stuff. And a lot of times these, like the serial killer stuff, that should be, especially the ones that's Bigfoot related, or the ones where they're like some of that breaking news tonight about where they tried to abduct a little girl back on the hiking trail. We need to use it as a cautionary tale for people to be prepared for such things as that if you're out in the woods. You never know what you might run across. Bigfoot, I don't worry much about Bigfoot killing me. I'm more worried about maybe running into some joker back there. You never know about that, running from the police, hiding out or whatever. I worry more about something like that happening than Bigfoot hurting me.
Well, what was that display that was put up somewhere? It was just a mirror, and it said the most evil creature on the planet, and it was a mirror.
You looked at it. That's true. Yeah, it's a funny little story. I remember when I was a kid, we went to Dollywood, and they had a wooden fence up and had a hole in it, and it said a two-headed donkey. You look in the hole and you see a two-headed donkey. You look in there, and they had a donkey painted, and they had a mirror there where your head was the second donkey. It was kind of just a jokey thing. It's kind of funny because everybody's going to look, But you're right. Humans are capable of some of the most horrendous things ever. Not that you can't get attacked by a bear or maybe even a Bigfoot or a cougar or whatever, but I don't worry too much about Bigfoot harming me. I worry more about sometimes I worry about a cougar, just depending on the area. But I worry more about stuff like that than I do, about people than I do Bigfoot.
Yeah, if Bigfoot's gonna harm you, you're not gonna live through it. You won't know it anyway. There's no point in there's things that you can do to be cautious of that. But if you're gonna get hurt in the woods, it's gonna be by animals or people that are living like animals.
Yeah. Well, I guess we will go ahead and start winding the show down. We appreciate everybody that showed up tonight. We appreciate the interaction in the chat room. There probably won't be a show next week. I will probably be out of town for a little space of time there, and I won't be able to prepare or have a show ready. But the following week we should be good to go. I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I enjoyed doing it. We've run past our time, so but that's okay. It's all right. We don't have to worry about it. And we got to get up. My wife's still on the 2:30 shift, so she will have to get up about 2:30 or 2 a.m. something like that, and I'll probably get up too and do some work. I got some website stuff I need to do tomorrow, if possible, if I can, and some artwork stuff I need to do for a film for a client. So we appreciate everybody that showed up and that will watch this show later. If you are not a subscriber, we ask you please to subscribe and follow the YouTube channel. Every view counts for us. We like getting a few views. Leo and I will try to give you the best information we know. Our information is based on actual boots in the forest research, not something we watched on some dumb TV show. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. Sometimes the information's not good. But Leo, I guess that's it, brother.
Well, I enjoyed doing it again this week, but so we got next week off, and then we're back on the week after that.
Yeah, so you can have something really worked out good for then.
Well, actually, for a while there, things were I'd be just watching something, then there's an idea for a show. There's an idea for a show, and then we get talking, and no, went completely blank.
Also, before we close out tonight, we want to tell you that if you are interested in watching that story about Willard the Hermit, Gully Lake Hermit, it's on YouTube, and it is also on Tubi TV, and you can probably find it on Amazon and other places too. It's only about an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. Good little watch. So Leo turned me on to that, and it was a good little show, and we end up talking about it tonight and talking about hermits of all things. And even though we didn't talk a whole lot about it, I'm sure that some of these hermits have been mistaken for Bigfoot. We didn't talk about that a whole lot. I'm sure somebody who has been out there hunting, they see something just zip through the forest real quick, and it could possibly have been a hermit. Not saying that there's not Bigfoot there, but could possibly been some misidentifications on that.
Absolutely.
All right, I guess that's it. Leo, I guess say goodbye.
All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, man, be good and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, right.
NyQuil, baby, NyQuil. All right, guys. Appreciate y'all. Y'all be safe, be good. Appreciate you guys for showing up and supporting us. And we will see you next time. No bad luck.